Just slowly letting everyone join. All right, the numbers stopped ticking up, so I think we can get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you for spending your Wednesday, either late afternoon or evening with us, depending on where you're at. You are about to listen to us talk about how to navigate the transition to college, anxiety, academic success, and some other stuff that we thought would be helpful for you. I am Carley Nuzzo, and I am a senior counselor at ESM. I work with high school students and college students through undergraduate mentorship and grad students. So that's me, and I am also here sharing this presentation with...
My name is Kitron. I work for Appleroot Tutoring Services under the umbrella of GuideWell. And I work mostly as an SAT, ACT, and LSAT tutor, but I also do some executive function coaching, which we'll talk about today, and just generally want to give insight on the transition to college, that experience, and then we'll aim to leave some time at the end for questions. So feel free to put them in the Q&A as we go through today.
Yay, let's get started. All right, so today we're going to talk about, pretty broadly, we're going to talk about what the college transition looks like and how it can impact students, strategies for managing the transition from high school to college, and ultimately how to be successful in college, how to thrive on campus, achieve your goals, and make the most of your time there.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about two things, really: anxiety, just generally, and how that can show up both in the transition when you're, going from often senior year in high school to a freshman in college. And then we're also going to talk about executive functioning, which I mentioned. But the anxiety piece is going to be mostly just about academic performance, but also how it can affect other areas of your life. And so I'll present as if I'm talking to seniors in high school and or their parents, guardians, but I think this is applicable to teachers, counselors, coaches, really pretty much anyone. And again, that second part of my piece is going to be about EF, which we're going to talk about what they are, how they relate to and can help with this transition to college, and just look at a few little things like how are we approaching this transition, right? Not coming from a place of fear or anger or stress, and rather trying to come from a place of curiosity, being self-aware, being adaptable. But let's start with the anxiety piece. And really, it's prevalent, anxiety is prevalent among younger students. It's really common among adults. Globally, as of 2021, so this was kind of early-ish pandemic time, 1 in 7, which is 14% of children aged 10 to 19 experience some type of mental health conditions. Among those, you have emotional disorders, very common. Anxiety disorders are the most prevalent. And you can see just some statistics there. They are more common, anxiety disorders are more common among older teens than when you're in the 10 to 14-year-old range. So it's a very common thing. I think that's one thing. If you do experience anxiety, just knowing that you're not alone, right? That you're one of many, just by itself, I think that can be just a helpful way to keep perspective. What is anxiety? So we want to separate that from kind of normal day-to-day worry. Anxiety is an actual disorder characterized by excessive and persistent worry. That goes beyond the typical nervousness that we associate with test day, jitters, or a new social interaction, right? Or prom, for example. And that can evolve into a persistent feeling of fear, apprehension, and unease that we know as anxiety, which can interfere with our daily life and well-being, of course. Went back to 2018, so pre-pandemic, 63% of college students reported feeling overwhelming anxiety at some point in the past year. I mean, that's a huge number.
Yeah.
And in the same survey, 23% reported being diagnosed or treated by a mental health professional for anxiety. And Carley's going to talk a bit later about options you have on campus for support. I think it's very important to know when and how to advocate for yourself, which is much easier said than done. What we see a lot is if a student's anxious in high school, so sophomore, junior, senior year, we have some anxiety, whether it's clinically diagnosed or not. What we see is that's the primary student complaint. From the years 2009 to 2015, there was a 30% rise in students seeking appointments at college counseling centers, which is indicative of maybe more anxiety, more mental health issues, but it's also a sign that students are seeking help. 61% of those students were there for anxiety. You see a significant amount for depression or generalized quote unquote stress. And I will also say, just because I think it's good to speak from a human level, like I experienced anxiety, and I did when I went to college. I went off from Illinois to the University of Miami, and I certainly experienced a lot of these feelings, both at the beginning of the transition, through it, and then I think that's, if I'd had some of these tools and known first off that it was very common, I wasn't alone in this, I think it would have made a big difference. And then just having attended several colleges, I know that that transition itself can be hard. Starting in a new place and change can be just tough. So be gentle with yourselves if you're having these feelings or if your child is. The reason anxiety occurs, I mean, there's a lot of reasons that it can come up, but the sharpest increase we see is definitely during that initial transition, right? So that means some students now are rising, or they just graduated high school, right? They're going off to college in a month or two. And the first year, I think, so the transition plus the first semester, first year, can often result in worsening, or if you don't have anxiety, sometimes it can cause the onset of that. I actually talked to my mom about this presentation this week, and she remembered that when I was at Miami, I called home and I was very homesick. And her perspective was also that the 6 months or a year leading up to it was really not great. She described me as like not the most fun to be around. And her thought is that it's because both the student and the parent or guardian are often feeling some anxiety about just that separation, right? I was nervous about leaving my parents in my home. And of course, I was their firstborn, and so it's stress on their end too. So I definitely think that homesickness can be a thing, even if you're just going like an hour away from home. Academic pressure is a big anxiety producer, of course, especially if you put a lot of internal pressure on yourself, or if your parents, if you feel that pressure, that can be a factor. Social dynamics, financial issues, and then just that challenge of you're going off on your own. It's a brand new, lot of independence, and that can be great, but it can also make us realize, whoa, I used to have this done for me, and it can produce anxiety that now you've got these new tasks. The way anxiety can manifest is excessive worrying, decline in grades, and it can actually make your physical health worse too, as anyone who's experienced severe anxiety knows. One of the biggest things, so when I do executive function coaching, one of the biggest things is we got to separate playtime and work time. And even if you're not always playing on your phone, right? Maybe you're going and looking at news, right? Or you're going to a Discord server for something helpful. Either way, being on the phone disrupts our work time. And you can see here, look how much time people are spending on the phone. Right? And I mean, I'm guilty of some of this too, but 6 hours of leisure time spent looking at a device, not only is that going to cause procrastination and lack of productivity, but it actually contributes to anxiety. And oftentimes just detaching from social media or the phone, as people realize on a short vacation, can make a world of difference. All of a sudden, oh man, I'm not stressed about the social trappings. I can just kind of relax and spend time doing real leisure. Analog, meaning real life engagement, is better than screen time. So that kind of follows. if you're reading a news story, better to do it from a newspaper. Some people get a lot out of attending religious services and the social aspect of that. Sleeping 7 hours a night, which most of my students would scoff at, like that never happens. But if you can do it, and some students do set aside the time to make sure, that makes a huge, huge difference. And then physical activity, right? Getting exercise. Studies just show that all non-screen activities are linked to more happiness, whereas screen activities are linked to loneliness and therefore less happiness. Easier said than done, because it's very easy to go online, right? Or just go on Twitter or go on Instagram. But if you can, especially when you have like a real task to do, like I want to spend 4 hours doing my college application, you need to put that phone charging on another side of the house, right? Or figure out what's going to let you separate that. And then as we kind of get towards the end of the anxiety piece, just look at, this is from 2017, but this was students who self-reported that they either had treatment or a diagnosis of mental health disorder. And so you can see a huge amount of those are anxiety and depression, and then panic attacks, which are associated with anxiety. I think that also ADHD, which is a learning difference, also associated with anxiety and depression and some of these others. And then not only are these very common, they're also some of the major impediments to academic success, right? So lack of sleep, anxiety, stress, and depression are the big ones. And you can see over time, so this is a backwards graph, but 2011 on the right, only 20% of people suffered, or I guess found anxiety to be an impediment, whereas now in 2017, it's about a quarter of students. So again, just understanding that this is something a lot of people deal with, but it can be a major factor when it comes to academic and just personal success. So as a parent, as a tutor, as a coach, the question is, and even as yourself, the student, how do we frame things, right? Language is going to be crucial. Is what I'm feeling, is it just natural stress because I'm going off to a new college, a new place? Or is it functionally limiting me? Is it really anxiety? And you may need a doctor to help you diagnose that. The question also becomes, what's the difference between stress or worry and true anxiety? Again, sometimes they blend together. But it's possible that we are pathologizing, meaning we're making a natural and normal experience. I'm stressed because I'm doing new things. We don't want to then build that into, oh my God, I have anxiety. Some people definitely do, but some people are just feeling nervousness about a new experience or change. And you can even get hyped up, right? Or just kind of wired by discourse with teachers. If they say, well, you must do this now, or like if you don't get this grade, you won't get into this school. Students internalize that. So we just have to be careful. Some stress is a good thing. And so I always tell this for students taking tests, which is obviously a big factor in anxiety, testing anxiety. It is normal, it is good to have some stress. That helps us be motivated, it helps us maintain focus. And sometimes that adrenaline and urgency, especially for athletes, I find is helpful on test day. And the same can be said for college apps and just this transition, right? You want to plan, but you don't want to be very high octane about it. It's okay to have these worries that pop up, right? But then you want to make sure that we're somehow funneling those into productive action. And then we'll also talk a little bit about self-care, calming behaviors. So if anyone's experienced severe anxiety, they've probably learned some of these techniques. But a little bit of stress is totally okay. You just don't want it to be functionally limiting. So what we need to do is teach ourselves and teach our students about the importance of inner dialogue. So if you're being really harsh on yourself and you're saying, I'm bad at math, which I hear a lot, or I'm never going to get into this college, I'm never going to finish this application, right? Oh, I'm dumb. All these things are not productive and usually very much not true. So one technique is when you see that happening, you want to kind of step back to your higher self. You label these thoughts. Oh, I'm judging myself. I'm doubting. or even just thinking, so that you know it's not real, right? Don't allow yourself to have a self-fulfilling prophecy of kind of this negative feedback cycle. You can even have this higher self, their inner coach, say to that critic, hey, what are you doing? Be nicer to yourself. Deep breathing, so breath work, mindfulness, meditation, exercise, sleep, but then also just going out in nature. So much, much better. Even looking at pictures of nature can be relaxing. These are all things that I think Carley would probably expound upon more a little bit later. And then finally, let's talk executive functions, and then I'm going to pass it off. So this is something that has really come on the scene a lot in the past 5-10 years. I didn't know much about it, certainly not in high school or in college. But what they are is just what you see here. There's the pillars of working memory, cognitive flexibility, and self-control. And then within those, executive function includes stuff like planning, prioritizing, setting goals, right? And then making sure you're self-regulating and monitoring inhibitions and so on. Here's a very wordy slide. What I want you to get out of it is that executive functions are skills that we all have, and they can be developed and improved both with coaching or just, naturally we develop these skills. A big part of it is just being conscious of the way we think. And then based on that, we can adapt, learn, and do better. And there's no hierarchy. So like if, for example, if we have ADHD, by definition, we are probably lacking in some time management skills and oftentimes some of these other areas. But it's in a spectrum. So just because I'm strong at planning doesn't mean that I'm strong at self-regulating, and vice versa. Right? One thing to do is identify where am I strong and where am I not, and that's where you want to kind of build. So this person would want to look at timers and watches and kind of really be thinking about how do I manage my time a little bit more effectively. Here's some of the skills that we're talking about. So the core skills are on the left side. Skills that we all have in certain degrees. Impulse control. How good are we at, like, I want to, grab that candy bar. How good am I at not doing it? Working memory, meaning how much can we keep in our brain at one time? People have that in different balances. Controlling our emotions, right? I guess that's doubled there. And then flexibility, so adaptability, and when there's a change, some people get really flustered and it's kind of screws up their day. Others are fine and can adapt to that. And then task initiation. So you're going to see on the other side that also is there, because I think that can be broken down into parts. Some people can start a task, right? Their project is begun and we're great, but then they'll leave it. They won't persist. Others can start and persist, but just don't finish it, right? So think about which part of that maybe gives you trouble. Maybe that makes us procrastinate. And then finally on the right side, I think the biggest one is on the bottom right. So yes, we want to set goals, but the biggest thing is this is all about metacognition, thinking about the way we think. If you kind of reflect on a past experience, right, whether that was a transition from middle school to high school, right, or a test or whatever, that can help you realize, well, here's what went well, here's what didn't go well. And that can change your ability in the future to access the other skills. You become a better planner, better prioritizer, and so on. So a lot of this is just helping students and helping ourselves think about how we operate, how we think, and how that might be unique or different from other people. Something that I try to do as a coach, so whether you're, a lot of my students are juniors, but I think especially when you're going from high school to college, don't try to avoid the comparison. It's really hard with social media, right? And just keeping up with the Joneses. But if you can keep the competition self-focused, I have a goal of getting this GPA this semester, right? Or whatever, or your social goals, or whatever they are. Everyone's progress will be different. Depends on where you start, what goals we set, and then we can chart our progress. But your goal should be think where I struggle and where my strengths are, not about other people, because it's not helpful and it's stressful. And then really, as we kind of wrap this part up, planning all the steps is what we're trying to do here. And Carly, again, is going to give us a little bit more on that. But I think a lot of EF coaching and a lot of developing EF skills is about your ability to plan ahead. This will reduce anxiety. It'll make you more comfortable and calm and confident. If, let's say, you're looking at the college application process, even. So I have 8 schools I want to apply to. Let's look at some deadlines, right? Sketch it out, planning backwards from the application deadline, right? Or if, let's say, we're talking about just starting off fall semester in August, right? Or in September, then you got to think about what are the things I want to get done and just in a structured way, lay them out, right? What are the individual discrete steps? What am I going to need, right? If you're in school and we know I have a test coming up and office hours are on Wednesday, you better not wait till Thursday to do your study. So we often have this problem or this thing of saying, well, this is a problem for future me. But you want to say that in a different tone. Yes, it's a problem for future you. Imagine yourself dealing with it. That will help you then address it in the present. So our goal, again, as a coach, would be helping a student build their system. And this is something that you can do even without coaching, right? If you're a parent or a student, you can do this or help with this. If you don't have a system, we need one, right? Whether that's a big calendar or whether you've got it all just kept on your computer and phone. Probably remember Marie Kondo from several years back, clean slating. So you don't want a cluttered environment, both physically and digitally. Remove overstimulation because most of us are not multitaskers. Through that, we will build and reinforce good habits and make what is hard easy and what's easy hard. So if like what's easy is I'm going to go on my phone and just surf the web or social media, I want to turn my phone off, put it in airplane mode, make that difficult versus set myself up for a more productive, efficient, and just enjoyable work setting. Google Calendar is a lifesaver, so that's a big one for EF. And then keeping boundaries with time. Students will tend to just burn out by working, pulling all-nighters, but you want to schedule break time and keep healthy boundaries between work and play. And again, that takes a lot of exploration and metacognitive thinking. So how does this apply to the transition besides all the things we said? I mean, these skills, planning, organizing, of course they help academically, but they also help in life, right? Nobody likes the friend who's always late, right? Or who never brings, I don't know, never brings a gift to a party. The skills that you can develop help you become more effective at everything. So definitely going to help with the transition in college. That'll carry over into social life, work, hobbies, everything. And just know that adults, I mean, a lot of adults don't have great EF skills, right? And I know certainly there are some that I can work on and do, but just know they're transferable and everyone really deals with these in certain levels. That's all I've got. So I'm going to pass it off to Carley to talk a little bit about tangible applications to college.
Thank you. That was amazing. I know. It's like we could kind of have just been going back and forth because there's so much that is just crossing over. So students find themselves, you go to college, you find yourself with less support and less boundaries, which, like I said earlier, it's great in some ways. But it also, a lot of times when you're given so much leeway, it makes you need those EF skills more. When you don't, then that could lead to a lot of anxiety. It could lead to some of the issues that we're having, that a lot of students are having when they start that first year. So again, the internalized stress and pressure, talked about this, but I think another thing too is that you're coming out of a really high stress period of your life. Most students that are applying to college that senior year, honestly, even junior year, because junior year is like incredibly rigorous academically. Then you head into senior year and there's so much stress around college applications, so much stress around, hearing back from schools, and then, oh, your ED didn't accept you, and now you're pivoting to ED2, and then you're on a wait list, and then you don't know what you're doing. There's so much, and it's such a pressure cooker, and you have all of this pressure and all of this stress, and then all of a sudden you're just supposed to like feel good, right? But what I'm going to talk about in a minute too is that's been the goal for a long time, especially in your life. Like high school has really been focused on that one goal, and now you're here. And so that itself of losing that big goal out in the distance can also throw you off a bit. So that can also be kind of anxiety inducing too, is that you lost that North Star. You need to find a new North Star. And there's also, this kind of goes with the first one too, what I was saying about it, is there's an increased need to self-advocate and take initiative. So your mom won't be checking in on you and making sure that you did your homework. Your mom won't be making sure that you ate a balanced meal. You're not going home to parents that are making sure that you're home by, midnight, 2 a.m., whatever, that you're not out till that time every single night in a row. And so it's definitely a really exciting time, but there are a lot of things where if you're not prepared, and you don't have the skills and you don't have a plan, could cause a lot of stress and anxiety, or just affect your performance in that first year of school. And so to find success in college, which to me means like, yes, academic success, but also like there's so much more to college than just academic success. You're going to grow as a person. You're going to learn things outside of the classroom. I always say that leaving home and going across the country for school, I learned just as much by doing that as I did in the classroom during undergrad. So I think that that's such an important, it's such an important pivotal time in your life, not to add stress, but just that success is in your experience as well as academically. And so the first thing is, like I was saying, you're going to reorient and define new goals. So it's not to get into college anymore, which, yay, maybe you're super excited about that. You don't have to continually stress about that anymore. But you do want a goal that will guide you in some way through college, that will help you prioritize things, that will help you figure out like what matters and what doesn't, and how to bring everything together. So also seek guidance and accountability and support and community. This is huge because, like we said, you don't have that built in when you go to college. You have to kind of go out of your bubble, out of your dorm room, and find that. And so the guidance, well, I'm going to get into this in more slides, but seek all of those things, seek support, and then also make the most of your resources. So I'll talk about this more too, but make sure the first thing is like, now you can get ahead of this. You can go on your school's website. You can figure out like what the student union is like, where things are located. You can figure out like how your student health insurance might work, what your meal plan looks like. Is it just that you have to eat in the halls? Are you allowed to take things home? Like all of the different pieces, where the mental services would be, what's covered, what that looks like. Is it one-on-one? Is it more group sessions? All the things, so that you really know what you're getting into when you get there. And I know that for me, that makes a whole heck of a lot of difference when I know and I'm very type A too. So, but like, if I know what I'm getting into, I'll be less stressed when I get on campus. Which was not the case for me, but you live and you learn. So again, back to digging a little deeper here. So seeking guidance and accountability. You can find, there's student support. So there's tutoring services at most schools. There's libraries that with I have it on here. Visit the library and take a tour. I know that you can find everything on your phone or on your computer now, but it's really helpful to be able to learn how to research from someone who that's their job, right? And they can help you with that. A lot of students haven't done that kind of work before. And so taking a tour of the library, finding those quiet workspaces, like maybe you get to campus and you're doubled up in a dorm and your dorm mate does not study the way that you do, find those nice spaces. And, like I was saying too, like your going to have to explore a little bit, if you don't know already, what study atmosphere is best for you. So if you like it really quiet, I highly recommend finding your libraries. If you like for me, I really like background noise. Like I don't want my roommate like having a conversation next to me, but I just feel energized by stuff around me. And so I like to go to coffee shops. Like that's where I like to work. And so you just have to figure out what works best for you and find that. I got off topic, but here we go. So student support. You can find good friends that have, again, back to that goal setting, that have similar goals and interests to you, that are going to help support you and cheer you on. Reach out to your professors, set meetings with advisors and professors early, even if you don't think that you're going to struggle in that class. Even if you think that you read the website, not to knock on that since I just said that, but you read the website and you know what your requirements are, make sure you talk to your advisor and just get that face time. As freshmen too, you don't know what you're going to want down the line. Maybe you will want to go to grad school and you'll need your advisor's help with that or something. It really will pay off. I have to say, when I did undergrad, and it wasn't that long ago, this makes me sound ancient, but when I was in undergrad, we didn't have designated advisors. We just had you were just supposed to go talk to a faculty member in your major. I don't know what undeclared people did, but so I was using this little online website to figure out all my classes. And come sophomore year, I had all the APs and stuff, so I tested out and stuff. I was done with my major classes, and it said you're done. And I went up to my faculty advisor and I was like, guess what? I get to graduate. And she's like, no, you need 120 credits. So that's showing that I'm a first gen student. But I just had no idea. You need to make those meetings early. There's nothing like FaceTime with human beings to answer your questions. A website, you're going to think it is a good start. Read the website, go to the website first, then go meet with someone so that you have your questions, you think you have your base of understanding, and then you can go and reinforce all of that, make sure that you have a good handle on everything. They might also have advice on things that are not super general, right? So if you're a poli-sci student, they might have information for poli-sci majors. But if you're interested in, Chinese diplomacy, or you're interested in, whatever it might be, your advisor might actually have more insight into, okay, well, there's actually this really cool program that is this really cool study abroad program, or there's actually this internship that this professor will let you work for them over the summer or something like that, that might not just be on the general website. So learn about tutoring, and it should probably be two different bullets there, is to learn about tutoring and mental health support. So tutoring varies by schools of how much support they'll have for you. So find out what your school has, and if you need to augment that with outside of school support. Study groups are great too. So make sure you know what helps you. And acting early will help you do that too. So if you start out and you're meeting with tutors at school and they don't teach the way that you learn best, then you have time before the midterm or the final to make a switch. Same with you start a peer group and it's just not really doing it for you. There's time. So I would start as soon as that first week of school, that fun orientation week, try something. And then mental health support. Every school will have some kind of counseling support at your school. Like I said, it could vary based on the services that they're giving you, based on insurance, based on what they offer and their bandwidth. Figure that out early, especially if you have had anxiety or other mental health struggles in the past. Figure out what they offer, figure out what that would look like. And if that doesn't work for you, talk to someone so that they can kind of help you navigate the whole thing. And I already talked about libraries. Okay, new goals. So we're kind of going back to what I was talking about before. Your past 4 years, unless you're a very special, different high school student who wasn't worried about going to college, which if you're here on this webinar was probably not you. The past 4 years had one goal. You were trying to get into X school, right? Or A school. And now you're here. And so you're kind of just, you have to figure out that next goal. Some of you might have it. Some of you might be like, I'm going to get my MBA and then I'm going to be 30 under 30 and all the things. But some of you might just be like, I did it. Now what? And so now I'm going to go. No, anyways, we're not going to go there. So there's really an importance of a thorough game plan. And this is what I do when I'm helping a lot of students through the transition. It helps put things in perspective. And like I was saying, we work backwards. So we set that goal of what do you want out of the next 4 years? And then we start backwards with, okay, how do we get there? What do we do this first semester of college to set ourselves up to reach that goal ultimately? And so that starts with, obviously everyone's goals at the end of college are honestly much different than even high school. It's much more diverse of what you might want to do, but knowing the requirements so that you can take the right classes to graduate on time, you're not wasting time and money on extra class, extra stress. I'm going to make fun of myself again. My first semester of college, I took an honors psychology class at 8 a.m. Probably not the best call. I did not need to take an honors class in psychology. It wasn't my major. And 8 a.m., it sounds like you can do it. Okay. So it sounds like you can do it because you went to school early. I was like, I did a 0 period in high school. I was at school at 7 a.m. It's a little different in college. So I would recommend not taking an 8 a.m. class your first semester of college. If you end up being a morning person, then go for it. But I would say give yourself a little bit of leeway there. And then also make sure that the rigorous classes you're taking are ones that, one, you need to take, two, they are, like they're your strengths, especially that first semester. I would honestly recommend maybe not taking your most rigorous classes that first semester while you're trying to figure everything out. And just having like a balanced course load that first semester. But again, making that game plan so you're like, okay, if I don't take this more rigorous class this first semester, I know I can take it next semester, or they don't offer it till next year. So that means I need to take this other class this year, and really like game planning the whole thing so that you don't end up having to do an extra year or summer or something that you don't want to do that might take away from your internships. But that's also something that you should be thinking about too when you make your game plan is, as of now, and things can totally change. In college, they'll change pretty often. You might end up changing majors. You might just end up changing what you want to do with that major. But for now, thinking about what that big goal is, and then thinking about what are maybe the extra things besides classes that I should be doing. So should I be interning? What does that look like if I also have to work, or if I'm also rushing this semester, and kind of like piecing all that together so that you do get some sleep, so that maybe you get to go outside, take your shoes off, put your feet in the grass, like ground yourself in some way. And you're not overly stimulated by all the things that you think that you have to do. All right, and then kind of the same thing. Your new goals can guide you to make the most of your next 4 years. So like I said at the very beginning, making the most of your 4 years, it's also networking. It's also growing as a human being. So leave time for that. It doesn't have to all be grinding. I hope that you all get some life experience in college, but finding a balance between those two, right? So you shouldn't just get to college and hit the strip every single night. That's not going to get the most out of your 4 years. It might be really fun the first week, but it's going to contribute to all of the other struggles that we talked about. So finding a good balance between social, extracurricular, academic, and making sure that what you're doing will reach that final goal, will help you graduate college really happy, set up for your next step. And so consider your post-grad plans. This might not be the case your freshman year. You might just not know yet. But as soon as you start thinking about grad school or entering the job market, you do want to be, again, setting yourself up for that. So an internship with a company that you would consider working for after graduation is super important. If you're considering grad school, if that's, you know, a PhD program, you're going to want to be doing some kind of research in undergrad. And so kind of giving yourself that time, I would say by your sophomore year, you want to start thinking about adding in some of those components that will boost your resume for whichever direction you're going to be going. Oh, and that's it. Okay. That's it. Okay, so we will go to questions now. So if you want to send them in the Q&A, we will, I don't know, we probably can't, we wouldn't be able to hear them. So Q&A, any questions that you have. And if you have questions after the webinar, feel free to reach out to either of us. You will get some feedback after this webinar, and so you can find our information. But I am Carley Nuzzo at ESM, and Tal is at Apple Ruth.
Which is, yeah, now under the same umbrella. But yeah,
we're under the same umbrella.
Seeing some questions come in, so definitely.
Okay, here we go.
Let's see what we got.
College accommodations.
Yeah. Do you want me to talk about that a little bit?
You can start. I just had a student, or yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, yeah, so college accommodations, I mean, generally, if you have a 504 plan or an IEP in place where you have accommodations in high school, so like, let's say that's for testing, or, you know, it's usually for that. It's usually for extra time on tests or something of the like. You want to make sure that you talk with your high school counselor about that, and they will help you set up any applications you need, right? I assume, of course, the admissions office at the college you end up at is going to be crucial as well. But accommodations in college work very much like they do in high school, right? It's according to the American Disabilities Act. And so it does work well, but you have to be proactive. And then, of course, it does require an understanding and a diagnosis, but also just mainly an understanding of what is it that I have used in the past that definitely works, and then just making sure that you get that in place in college. And then Carly mentioned student support services, which can help with financial, but also just the other like counseling aspects. So if you don't have your proper accommodations, student support services would probably be the first place I would go if I was on campus to try to get that in place.
Yeah, you can also reach out to them even if you do have your accommodations already, and they can help you kind of organize and know who to reach out to about those different things. So I have a senior, a rising college student, who just texted me today, actually, that she got everything covered, everything that she asked for. They said yes. Like, if you have a plan, especially, I would say, if you know that you want those things, I'd reach out to your school now. It'll also reduce your anxiety and your stress if you know everything is in place before you get there. So there's nothing stopping you from reaching out early, and making sure everything's in place, or at least you know what to do when you get to campus.
Right, and I guess, yeah, I should have expounded. Whereas if you're in high school and you don't have accommodations in place, but you're feeling like I need them, make sure you do start in high school, because you're much more likely to receive those same accommodations once they are in place and have been for a little while.
What is the best way to connect with other students with similar goals once on campus? Ooh, that's a good one. I think we could probably both speak to this because it's not really a black and white question. So I would say, you know, if you are living in certain dorms, so sometimes there's like honors dorms, the students around you might have similar goals. I would also look at the classes that you're taking. So if you're in a class that's not a one-on-one class, like if you are taking a class, or if you sit in the front row and someone sits in the front row next to you, that's a clear sign. But I would also look into joining something, right? So something that's aligned with your interests in some way. So whether that's like rec basketball, maybe it's just someone that knows that they need to exercise to relieve the stress. That could be someone that would be nice to lean on. If it is, you know, something more academic or professional club, then you have someone that is going to, you know, be taking the LSAT with you in a couple years or something like that. I don't think that it's like you can only have friends with people that are trying to do the exact same thing as you. I actually think it's like good and healthy not to. But making sure that you are surrounded by people that do have those like main priorities, or at least someone with each main priority, is really important. And so if that's like religion for you, or your, you know, your future career, or, you know, exercising, like I said, or anything like that, I would just try to put yourself out there in each of those little interests. So yeah, I keep going back to like my experiences, but I remember just saying hi to a girl in the elevator and being like, if she thinks I'm weird, like I might not ever see her again. It's a big school, like whatever. She ended up being like one of my really good friends in college. So if you're working, people at work that are also, you know, juggling work and school, that could be really helpful. That was huge for me. So yeah.
I agree. Yeah, it's a balance, but I'll echo that. You like, it's not necessarily connecting with people with similar goals. To do that, it's more, you know, meeting people in class, right, and
Yeah.
exploring people in your major. But for me, it was always intramural sports. Is how I met a ton of my best friends, both in undergrad and in law school. And then gravitate towards what you enjoy and what you feel you're good at, like what you like. If you're a music person, right, I think that that's something you could do. If you do theater, right, then you can get involved in community or campus productions. So there are options, but I would say the underlying thing is be ready to be out of your comfort zone a little bit and maybe say yes to some things that you wouldn't normally do, because you never know, even if you don't enjoy it, maybe you'll meet someone else who equally doesn't enjoy it. Or
I was just about to say someone else who hates it too.
exactly. So just getting out of that comfort zone and saying yes to some things can also help you meet people and just get out of your shell a bit. But yeah, that's a really good and tough
That's a
question.
great, yeah, it's a great one.
Others? Well, yeah, I don't know, Carly, if you have any final words. I would just say, like, my last words would be that remember that this is a process that thousands and thousands of people are going through and have been for a long time. So just remember that some stress and some anxiety is normal, for one, and that like things are going to go wrong. Not everything's going to be perfect, and that's okay too. So you're learning things about yourself, you're exploring, you'll make mistakes, but that's natural, normal, and totally okay. So just, yes, it's an anxious and stressful process, but it doesn't need to encompass everything.
Yeah, totally. Be open and be kind to yourself and other people. Have grace for yourself and other people, because they're going through the same thing too. So if you're the person that you're sharing, your roommate is, you know, you don't jive with them, or they're a little rude the first week, like maybe they're just going through something too. So um, be open to changes in your goals and changes in yourself. And but definitely, yeah, just enjoy it. Enjoy it. Don't take it too seriously. Take it seriously, but not too. Just enjoy the ride.
We probably come up with 5 tips. I think number one, it sounds
Good.
like planning ahead, right?
Planning ahead.
And that we talked about working backwards. So from deadlines, I think that the planning ahead aspect helps, obviously, because you're going to meet the deadlines, but it reduces anxiety.
Yeah. So a lot of times, like what I said, when I'm working with undergrads, especially that first semester, we'll just map out each of their classes. So we'll go in and we'll look at the awesome thing about college is you get the syllabus You see all the things that you're going to have to do. And then you can look at each week in the semester and when you're going to do each thing, which is so nice. Also planning ahead as far as what I was talking about is this summer. So if you have accommodations, go online, make sure that you have everything together that you need. Same with any other kind of like support services or anything that you really like feel like you need. Like if you need a quiet place for studying, I said like sign yourself up for library tour or something like that. Yeah.
So yeah, another tip is knowing where you can find support both during and after the transition. So that could apply to accommodations or mental health or physical support. What else? We also talked about, I guess another big one would be just like, it kind of goes with planning ahead, but I do think that getting into some of the granular detail is good. So Carly mentioned like knowing your meal plan and all that. So that goes under number one. What else do you think we should add here?
I would say let's plan ahead, know where you can find support. Um,
I think honestly, like talking to people, so like communicate. That's both with parents, peers, teachers, right? Like the
and advocate for yourself.
right. So yeah, I like that a lot. Self-advocacy and awareness. The other thing that probably just goes under this is I really think the virtual tours are huge. We didn't really mention that enough, but like take a virtual tour or a bunch because yes, college visits are great and you need to see if you could see yourself on campus. But good Lord, the fact that these are available is a huge advantage and it can really tell you a lot about whether this is a school you can see yourself at or what's available.
Yeah, and then a lot of times there's like mini virtual tours too. So there's like the big university-wide virtual tour, but then there's one where you can look at the student union. There's one where you could look at your specific major and they talk about like being a STEM major or they talk about being pre-med. And again, like what I was talking about with going on the websites or whatever, this can also prompt you to know what questions to ask and what else to look for too. So that's super important because that could be one thing where like you just don't even know how to plan ahead or how to know like where to find support. Like you might just not even know where to start. And so this is a good place to know where to start the virtual tours, the websites, and then you can start formulating
Yep.
questions if you need them.
It all comes back to just coming from a place of curiosity, right? You're in the same boat as the others.
Yep.
All right. I think
And be kind to yourself and
yeah,
gracious.
always.
Parents, be kind and gracious.
Yeah, yeah. We students do internalize pressures from others for sure. But hope you guys really got a lot out of this. And then again, as Carly said, reach out if you have further questions. But really appreciate you guys joining.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thank you so much.